And perhaps every Saturday you'll have test. Now we'll pick up our momentum. अभी तक तो आराम से प्यार से चल रहे थे. मिल गया. सुनिए राम, कोई है चाय के लिए बोल दीजिए अगर होगा कोई तो. Next week Holi is coming. Are you going to home back? नहीं ना, यहीं पे दिल्ली में हो. अच्छा, यहीं पे होली खेलनी है. नहीं खेलनी है. Okay. You don't like? Oh, होली खेलने के लिए फैमिली मेंबर नहीं होनी चाहिए. It's for Deepavali is for gathering of family member. होली के लिए तो anyone can be the. Huh? अच्छा. So अभी इस बार नहीं खेलोगे. अच्छा है. In Indian society, before Holi there are lots of song. Holy song, right? People sit and song together, sing together, right? They spend time. Yes, now because on Holi, the color they use like chemicals, right? And that is not good. Market had produced lots of chemical based colors, which is dangerous. Otherwise, Holi is one of the funnest, festival, isn't it? Right? If you look at the philosophy, of course, everything, it's multicultural, no? Not red, blue, yeah, this and that, जो भी color है सब, right? And every person is multicolored, right? Its lesson is very deep, right? There's no differences, है ना? होली में कोई ऐसा वो नहीं होता है. Anyway, चलो वो होली की बात है. हाँ, we have already talked about justice, Plato's, हाँ. इस वीक में खत्म कर दूंगा प्लेटो. Right. Today we'll talk about theory of education. Theory of education, right? Now, if you see theory of education, Republic, the text Republic is one of the finest texts on which on education, right? Rousseau is a philosopher. Rousseau is a great political philosopher, and he noted that Republic, the text Republic, is a ever best book on education, right? And in this book, Plato had written extensively on education. Now look at why he wrote on education. That is very important. And what is the purpose of education in an ideal state? Now, if you look at his statement that in an ideal state, every person should work according to their natural aptitude, right? Every person should work according to their natural aptitude in which they are, naturally suitable, naturally fitted, right? Now, here the role of state is to educate them and train them. And that is, how a state can be an ideal state, right? So here you can see the linkages between education and justice. Right, education and justice. Justice is something that every person should do according to their natural aptitude, or they are naturally suitable. Right? And if I'm naturally suitable to some work like art and craft, then state should educate me and train me so that I can be the excellent in that work. right? The education is not something ends in itself. Education is a means, right? Education is a means which enhances individual capability, isn't it? Even today, if you look at the role of education, the role of education is not something to, you know, to actually, it makes you a good person, it makes you a good citizen, and it enhances your capability. That is your education. Education is a means in itself, right? And education has no value if education has not changed you. I'm making sense. Like, look, if you acquire degree and if you don't have that kind of capacity or that kind of value within you, then there is no meaning of education, isn't it? Right? There is no meaning of education if you don't acquire certain values, right? Certain capability after getting an education, right? Then training has its own purpose, right? एजुकेशन के बाद क्या होता है? आपको इंटर्नशिप में भेजा जाता है. Look at the all education, right? होता है कि नहीं? So that is, he talks about education. Why this? This is why he talks about education. The purpose of education is to make the person excellent in which he is or she is naturally fitted. That is the purpose of education. And this is the way we can make an state as an ideal state. Right? So there is a link between education and justice. Right? And education and ideal state. There is a linkage between education and justice, and then education and ideal state. Got the idea? Now, samajh mein aaya na itna? Now look at and on education. What he talks about education. He said, the first and foremost work of the state, an ideal state, is also, is to furnish, monitor, and deliver quality education. पहला जो काम है स्टेट का, राइट, वो काम है एजुकेशन को देना, राइट, मॉनिटर करना, राइट, एंड इट शुड बी पब्लिक फंडेड एजुकेशन. You should not commercialize. Education should not be commercialized. It should be state monitored, state funded education, right? And he said, education, state itself is an educational institution. State itself is an educational institution. It educates so much of virtue to its own citizen. State educate citizens about the virtue, right? Like, for example, what teaching you have received from a state? Batao. If I ask you a question, yeah, what kind of teaching you have received from state? Yeah. Come again. I've been taught. वो तो ठीक है, वो तो प्लेटो की बात. मैं आपसे कह रहा हूं, मैं पूछ रहा हूं करेंटली कि what kind of education that you have received from state? Sorry? Feeling of nationalism, right? Correctly on 15th of August or 26th January, right? There is a, ceremony, the festivals, Tiranga hoisting, and then, the celebration of that moment, remembering our freedom struggle, leaders of freedom struggle, then, reading our national anthem, showing respect. That is a teaching that state has done to us, isn't it? Right? That is a teaching. That is a virtue. That is civic virtue. And it also, taught us that at the time of crisis, the citizens should come forward and, join the army. Isn't it? Now, this is how state is an educational institution. This way, state becomes an educational institution, right? Look at fundamental duty, that it also teaches you what to do, what not to do, isn't it? State teaches you what you should do, right? Like preamble, state tells you what you one should, consider India as a like, right? Anyway, right? So a state itself is an educational institution, right? And if knowledge is a virtue, right, then it must be taught. If knowledge is an a virtue, then it must be taught among citizens, right? So that we can develop a good citizen, right? We can ensure a good life. I'm making sense, right? And he said everything is possible. He said all improvement is possible through a good system of education, right? For Plato, education cannot be given to private institution. Now look at, there is a debate on whether private education should be given to private or not, or the state should acquire the entire education system, right? But we are running private public education, then we have also private education, right? Abhi jo aap jis system ho, this is private education. Then you have university, that was a public institutions, right? Now uh, Plato argued that uh, individuals should acquire education according to their natural aptitude, as per their requirement, right? And he said it is a compulsory, education for all. And it's a state should monitor education, a state should direct education. You cannot give education to other private body to furnish, no, to deliver, not. State has to monitor, state has to deliver, state has to direct entire education and its system. Am I making sense? Right? And he said this is the first and foremost work of a state, an ideal state. It, uh, बहुत कम मायने रखता कि स्टेट और क्या करता है. This is the first obligation on the state to deliver education to its citizen. It less it matters less what it does other work, right? अगर वो काम नहीं करता है, if the state does not deliver education, वो कुछ नहीं करता है. Now still we believe that state has to play a very important role in education. Now you have new education policy, right? You have new education policy, and the state is working on education, right? It promised that the funding of education should increase from 3.26, 3% of GDP to 6% of GDP. I'm making sense? Okay, right. So this is a general understanding of education. And then what he actually talked about, he talked about the schemes of education, right? He divided education into various, layers, right? Primarily, we can divide his education into two parts. One is the primary education, and secondary is the higher education. Primarily, we can divide, right? So, he talked about education till the 18, that is a primary education. From 18 to 20, right? Everyone will get army training. Man, woman, everyone. And then there'll be test. Right? And those who have natural aptitude like courage and wisdom should be allowed to study, and rest, let them allow to engage with the economy, right? Production, trade, commerce, artisans, handicrafts, agriculture, and so on and so forth. Right? So he divided education into two parts: primary education and the higher education. Right? Even primary education can be divided into two parts: pre-primary education. Pre-primary education is from 0 to 6 years, right? And during this period, children should be told stories, the courageous stories, right? To teach them moral virtue, right? Still we use, right? We teach stories, no? 0 to 6 year. 0 to 6 year, right? Students should be, the children should be taught with good stories, right? Story that actually about courageous man, virtuous man, right? About the great personality, about the, great leaders, about the epics like Mahabharata or this or that, right? वहां पर दूसरा epic था ओडिसी, right? So, and what is the purpose 0 to 6 years among of the teaching? To remove fear from the mind and make the person courageous and virtuous. That is the two things. Now, the after pre-primary education, there should be primary education. And primary education from 6 to 18. Kab tak? 6 to 18. Right? And within this, 6 to 18, children should be taught gymnastics, right? And music, right? Why gymnastic? Because gymnastic is necessary for physical power, right? To body, right? Even Vivekananda कहता है, you don't need book, you need football. Have you heard about Vivekananda's story? Right? He says, you don't need a book, you need, among the children, you need football. Right? So, because your body could be stronger. And then music. Music, why music? Because training of mind is very, very important. The training of mind is very, very important. And through music, your mind becomes healthy. And if you look at, if your mind is healthy, right, if your body is healthy, you are ready to get your education. Got the idea? Now, in the later stage, a student should be taught with, literature, right? Literature. Then also the quality should develop, that how to control themselves, how to be gentle, how to be polite, how to be courageous, right? And that is a primary purpose of primary education. Got the idea? देखिए इतना कहानी सुनने के बाद, और बुक किताब है आपके पास? Would you write from there? Should I tell you a story and then you will write from there? Is it possible, or do you want to write in the classroom itself? Depends on you. बताओ. Classroom ज़्यादा सही है, लिखो फिर. Now start writing. Right. The Republic is a classical text on. The Republic is a classical text. The Republic is a classical text on education. The Republic is a classical text on education. Rousseau Rousseau Rousseau, a noted philosopher. Rousseau, a noted philosopher. Whenever you write name, you must, write something about them. A noted philosopher, again, has argued that Republic is the best ever written. Republic is the best ever written. Republic is the best ever written classical work on education. Republic is the best ever written classical work on education. On education, right? Okay. What is the relationship between justice and education? Question लिखिए, question mark दे दिए. What is relationship between justice and एजुकेशन, पहले इसको जस्टिफाई कर लेते. What is relationship between justice and education? लिखिए. For Plato, comma, each person in ideal state. For Plato, each person in ideal state. For Plato, in each state in ideal state should work according to their natural aptitude. Each person in ideal state should work according to their natural aptitude. Each person in ideal state should work according to their natural aptitude. Each person लिख दिया, each person should, yeah. Each person should work according to their natural aptitude in the ideal state, right? This is justice. This is justice, comma, according to Plato. This is justice, comma, according to Plato. The role of an ideal state, the role of an ideal state, the role of an ideal state to educate, the role of an ideal state to educate a person, to educate a person in the field of a specialization, in the field of a specialization in which the person is naturally fitted. In which the person is naturally fitted. क्या लिखा? The role of an ideal state is to educate a person in the field of specialization in which fitted. Yeah. So the purpose of education, the purpose of education, so the purpose of education, so the purpose of the education to enhance capacity of a just person, capacity of a just person, capacity of a just person to work better, in their field of liking, the field of liking, 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 the field of liking. We'll stop. Further, it improves the mutual exchange in society. Further, it improves the mutual exchange in the society. Further, it improves the mutual exchange in the society. Right? and ensures good life, and ensures good life. Got the idea? The relationship between justice and education. समझ में आया? और लिखना है तो थोड़ा अब फिर सोल को डिवाइड कर दो, है ना? है ना? क्योंकि जस्ट पर्सन कौन है जो अपने सोल को सही से काम करता है, तो उसको डिवाइड कर दो फिर. हाँ, अच्छा. Now right, what is the relationship between education and ideal state? Second question, what is the role of education? So what is the relationship between education and an ideal state? What is the relationship between education and an ideal state? What is the relationship between education and an ideal state? Clear? What is the relationship between education and an ideal state? For Plato, education is a positive means. For Plato, education is a positive means. For Plato, comma, फिर लिखना. हाँ, कभी भी लिखते फॉर और कोई फॉर मार्क्स तो उसके बाद कॉमा लिखेंगे. हाँ, for Plato, education is a positive means. Education is a positive means through which a person can be a good citizen. Education is a positive means through which one person can be a good citizen, and he can live a good life. Can live a good life. A good citizen is needed in a good society. A good citizen is needed. A good citizen is needed in a good society. A good citizen is needed in a good society, and good society needed for an ideal state. And good society is needed for an ideal state. In an ideal state, right? Now change the paragraph and write, in an ideal state, Plato divides society into three classes. In an ideal state, Plato divides society into three classes. In an ideal state, Plato divides society into three classes based on the quality of soul. Based on the quality of soul. Stop. To nurture and train each soul, to nurture, N-U-R-T-U-R-E, nurture मतलब होता है उसको पालना पोसना। कोई माली अपने पेड़ को कैसे पालता पोसता, डेली जाके देखता है, उसको बोलते हैं देखभाल करना। यस, राइट। टू नर्चर एंड ट्रेन, टू नर्चर एंड ट्रेन, ट्रेन मतलब होता है उसको ट्रेनिंग देना है। टू नर्चर एंड टू ट्रेन each soul, to nurture and to train each soul, comma, education is education is mandatory. Education is mandatory. In order to Education is mandatory in order to develop develop each soul as a good citizen, as a good citizen, right? Full stop, and then change the paragraph and write Plato argues that Plato argues that state is the first and foremost state is the first and foremost state is the first and foremost an educational institution, an educational institution. First and foremost, educational institution. And it must provide education. And it must provide education to its all citizen. And state must provide education to all its all citizen. Let's stop. For Plato, for Plato, for Plato, comma, if knowledge is a virtue, for Plato, if knowledge is a virtue, if knowledge is a virtue, comma, it should be taught. If knowledge is a virtue, comma, it should be taught to each person. If knowledge is a virtue, comma, it should be taught to each person, right? To develop in fullest sense. To develop them in fullest sense. Fullest, Fuleest, not fullest, fullest. Full, FOL वाला नहीं, FULLEST. Fullest मतलब fully, yeah, हाँ? Fullest sense, whole, yeah, holistic. Fullest sense, yeah. Education is an important part of an ideal state. Education is an important part of Education is an important part of Education is important part of an ideal state. According to Plato, all improvement is possible. According to Plato, According to Plato, all improvement is possible only with a good system of education. All improvement is possible only with a good system of education. Or good system of education. State must monitor, state must monitor, 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 direct, comma, direct, monitor, comma, direct, comma, and deliver, deliver quality education, quality education, right? It must ensure that, it must ensure that education given to the people, education given to the people should serve, it must ensure that education given to the people should serve harmony and balance. Education given to the people should serve harmony and balance in society, in society. There should be state controlled and planned education. 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 It should be compulsory for all. It should be compulsory for all. It should be compulsory for all. It is the first and it is the first obligation on an ideal state. It is an it is first obligation on an ideal state. It is first obligation on an ideal state. And it matter less, and it matter less what else, what else, what else, ELSE, huh? What else state does. What else state does. It matter less what a state else does. A state is destined to decline if it does not provide education. State is destined, DESTIND. A state is destined to decline. State is destined to decline if it is not providing education to all. State is destined to decline if it is not providing education to all. Thus, ho gaya. Now, look, why you are reading Plato? The same topic we are discussing today. Why, Republic is a classical text. I didn't teach you what the meaning of classical. Right? मैं भूल गया पढ़ाते वक्त. Right? इसलिए मैं थोड़ा ना कुछ लेके साथ में आता हूँ कि मैं कुछ भूलूं ना और साथ में आपको देता हूँ. होता है कभी कभी दिमाग से उतर जाता है. एक वर्ड मैंने आपको नहीं बताया और पहले ही क्लास में बताना चाहिए जिसमें जब बेसिक्स बता रहा था ना, राइट, तभी कि क्लासिकल का क्या मतलब होता है. हम कहते हैं कि द रिपब्लिक इज अ क्लासिकल टेक्स्ट, पहले लाइन में लिखा है. What do you mean by the classical? क्लासिकल का क्या मतलब होता है? कहते हैं ये क्लासिकल है भाई, कहते हैं कोई गाना सुनो तो लगता है क्लासिकल, कोई टेक्स्ट पढ़ो तो क्लासिकल टेक्स्ट है क्या? High standard, yeah, you can say, or you know, you can say that a standard that is always relevant. Yeah, always relevant. You know, something is ageless, right? मतलब कभी भी हर टाइम पे वो उतना ही relevant रहेगा, importance उतना ही रहेगा. Like एक you know रामायण and महाभारत, or you know, for example, Ramcharitmanas, some epic, right? Similarly, Republic is an epic in the history of political thought, right? So why it is a classical? Classical, it is a ageless, timeless, right? All time relevant, all time relevant, right? Why Plato? Yeah, why you know Republic is a classical text? Even today, we discuss what kind of education the state should furnish, right? Now Plato had discussed it 23 years ago, 2300 years ago, right? We can learn something from Plato, isn't it? Right? What he said about education and what we are doing on education. Not only that he was the person who talked about education, there are many philosophers. Like, for example, Rousseau talked about education. I'm not teaching you the theory of education, right? In general, political theory of education. Just we are talking about an ideal state, and there where it is a part of education. There are many people who talked about education. राइट जो एजुकेशन सेंटर होता है ना, बीएड कराते हैं या एमएड कराते हैं, एजुकेशन पे बहुत सारा होता है, स्टडी होती है, राइट? वहां पर प्लेटो को पढ़ाते हैं, राइट? लुक एट द एजुकेशन, द रोल ऑफ एजुकेशन, द पर्पस ऑफ एजुकेशन, द पर्पस ऑफ द स्टेट टू डिलीवर एजुकेशन. Everything is written much earlier ago, much earlier, right? And that's why it is a classical text. Got the idea? Now we talked about this, what is the relationship between the education and real estate. We talked about what is the relationship between justice or and education. हो गया खत्म? Now let me talk about the scheme of education, the Plato's scheme of education. Plato's scheme of education. अब लिखते जाइए फटाफट लिखते जाइए. देखिए, Plato divided education into two parts. Plato divided education into two parts. First, elementary education. Elementary education. And second, higher education. Plato divided education into two parts, elementary education and higher education. अब लिखिए elementary education. Elementary education. Plato divided elementary education into two parts. Plato divided elementary education into two parts. First, it's called pre-primary education. आपको पता न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में इसको लाया गया है, उससे पहले नहीं था हमारे यहाँ ये कॉन्सेप्ट। प्री प्राइमरी एजुकेशन बट इंडियन फिलोसफी में थी, इंडियन फिलोसफी में है, ऐसा नहीं कि एजुकेशन में इंडिया का कंट्रीब्यूशन नहीं है, लॉट्स ऑफ कंट्रीब्यूशन, राइट, ठीक है, तो इंडियन फिलोसफी में थी, राइट। जैसे कहा जाता है कि 5 साल तक बच्चों को बहुत कुछ सिखा दिया गया था, बहुत सारे श्लोक, बहुत सारे स्टोरी, एंड थ्रू स्टोरी look at similarity, right? So there is a pre-primary education and second is primary education. And from 6 to 18 years. अब लिखिए प्री प्राइमरी एजुकेशन, इसमें ABC कर देते हैं, राइट, AB, क्योंकि यहाँ पहला किया है, AB कर देते हैं। अब लिखिए ए प्री प्राइमरी एजुकेशन, प्री प्राइमरी pre-primary education. Zero to 6 years. 0 to 6 years. आप फटाफट फटाफट, कुछ समझना तो है नहीं, समझा हुआ ही लिखिए, लिखिए फटाफट लिखिए, तो देखिए at this stage children should be told stories. Children should be told stories. At this stage children should be told stories of great personality, of great personality, great personalities, leaders and noble rulers, महान राजा रानी की कहानियां है ना, जब हम बच्चे थे तो आपने राजा रानी की कहानी सुनी है अपनी दादी से, किसी से सुनी होगी ना, एक था राजा एक थी रानी, हाँ ठीक है, ठीक है, और जब खत्म करना दोनों मर गई, खत्म कहानी बोलते थे ना, राइट, उनको शॉर्ट करना था, क्योंकि हम भी बहुत करते थे, और एक कहानी और सुनाओ और सुनाओ, है ना, कितना कहानी सुना है, तो बीच में वो खत्म करने के लिए स्टोरी खत्म। एनीवे क्या लिखा, नोबल रूलर्स, राइट, एंड ग्रेट एपिक्स, एंड ऑफ ग्रेट एपिक्स, एंड ऑफ ग्रेट एपिक्स, राइट, ग्रेट एपिक्स, एपिक्स मतलब हिंदी में काव्य बोलते हैं, लाइक महाभारत, महाकाव्य, लिखिए एपिक ब्रैकेट में लिख दीजिए, लाइक ओडिसी, ओडिसी, लिंक चेक करना पड़ेगा ओडिसी का, नहीं एलियड, एक मिनट बताता हूँ, ओडिशा से रिलेट नहीं करता, ऑफ कोर्स नॉट, ODYSSEY, ओडिसी and Iliad, ILLAD, Odyssey and Iliad, bracket close. होमर ने लिखा था इलियड ओडिसी, ठीक है, इट वाज अ ग्रेट नोबल, क्या लिखा, या bracket close, yeah, of God, of God, of God. The purpose of storytelling is, full stop. The purpose of storytelling is, the purpose of storytelling is to cultivate. The purpose of storytelling is to cultivate. Cultivate मतलब उगाना उसको. हमारा फार्मर क्या करता है? कल्टीवेट करता है. कल्टीवेट courage, courage and wisdom. Courage and wisdom. And make children free from fear. And make children free from fear. And make children free from fear. Moral stories are good. Moral stories are good. Moral stories are good to inculcate good. Moral stories are good to inculcate का spelling. To inculcate moral and civic virtue. Inculcate moral and civic virtue among children. Moral stories are good. Moral stories are good in order to are good, right? Moral stories are good to inculcate moral and civic virtue. नहीं लिखवाया ना? Among children, yeah, civic virtue among children. So that is a pre-primary education. Got the idea? Okay. Even in Indian philosophy, storytelling to children, even in Indian philosophy, storytelling to children comes in household education or family education. ठीक है? हाँ, न्यूट्रिशन की बात नहीं हो रही यहाँ पर. जैसे आप अभी जब हमारी एलिमेंट्री प्री प्राइमरी एजुकेशन है, यहाँ पर स्टोरी टेलिंग भी है, यहाँ पर न्यूट्रिशन की बात हो रही है. Why is it so? Because our country is facing, problem with malnutrition. Children are stunted, right? Not healthy, and that's why nutrition is very important part. Apart from this part, right? But here we are not focusing on nutrition because this is a new addition to this idea, right? But earlier, because there may not have been issue of nutrition, right? Every children, because of there was a sufficient, food or sufficient nutrition anyway. And philosopher has not put attention on nutrition, but they put attention on, what idea, what things to be cultivated in among the children. Now write primary education B. Primary education. Primary education. Okay, at this stage, each children should be trained. At this stage, comma, each children should be trained in gymnastic, 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 each children should be trained in gymnastic and music. At this stage, comma, each children should be trained in gymnastic and music. Gymnastic is good for physical power. Gymnastic is good for physical power. Gymnastic is good for physical power. Whereas music is necessary. Whereas music is necessary to train mind. Whereas music is necessary to train mind. A great mind resides in a great body. A great mind resides in great body. Great mind resides in a great body. Healthy body या great body, great healthy body लिख सकते हो. Great का यह मतलब है body, because ये gymnastic की बात हो रही है पीछे, right? Okay. Later on, children should be taught literature. Children should be taught literature. Children should be taught literature like poetry. In order to cultivate virtues. In order to cultivate virtues like self-control. Virtues like self-control. Like self-control, comma, courage. Comma, courage and gentleness. And gentleness. And gentleness. Done. Right? तो हमारा हो गया ये elementary education, right? Now one change the paragraph and write compulsory military training. Compulsory military training. Yeah. T capital में लिख दो. 18-20. Compulsory military training. अब देखो कि he prescribed elementary education for all, right? Man, woman, all, मतलब all citizens. Now then thereafter he said, every person who received education should get at least 2 years military training. Look at today, in many states military training is compulsory. Go to South Korea, it's compulsory. Go to Israel, it is compulsory. Right? Now consider that those days, a state would have been a smaller state. It was a smaller, tiny state. And security was one of the concern for each state. And that's why military training would have been mandatory. Now in India, it's not. Because we have sufficient number of persons. Right? And that's why it is a choice based. Whether you go or whether you should not go. Even if you want to go, you have to, you have to check. Look at the SSB होता है ना, CDS के बाद बहुत कठिन है उसको क्रॉस करना, बहुत कठिन क्रॉस करना, right? They select 250 people after written examination, right? For the SSB, it's called SSB, 5 days or 6 days SSB takes place. Now within the 5-6 days, they select only 2 sometimes 1, sometimes none. Right? Why? Because they want, the quality official, not only in study but also in aptitude that they check. Right? So that is very important. ठीक है? वो हमारे पास इतना है कि निकल के आ जाता है, इसमें से कोई दिक्कत नहीं होती. But still, if you look at officers, army officers are lacking. They are lacking. They are understaffed. Right? Anyway, you write. देखिए Plato argues that each person after elementary education, should undergo in compulsory 2 years compulsory military training. Undergo in 2 years compulsory military training. Right? Now you write first examination. कब होगा? मिलिट्री ट्रेनिंग 2 साल बाद खत्म. फर्स्ट एग्जामिनेशन एट HT. यहां पर पहली बार एग्जाम होगा. At age of 20. देखिए, after military training, comma, each person would face a test. Each person would face a test for knowing KNOWING, knowing the natural aptitude. The person who fails this test, and suitable to appetite, like peasantry, traders, manufacturers, craftsmen, and artisans. Should be dropped from higher education. dropped, D-R-O-P-P-E-D, dropped from higher education. They should be allowed for, they should be allowed for, they should be allowed for economic activity of the state. Economic activity of the state. Economic activity of the state. Those who pass the test, those who pass the test and have natural aptitude like courage and those who have passed the test and have natural aptitude like courage and wisdom should be given higher education, should be given higher education in order to train them, in order to train them in physical, mental, philosophical and moral arena. A-R-E-N-A, moral arena. A-R-N-E-A, arena, full stop. तो ये हमारा हो गया पहला टेस्ट, ठीक है। अब पहला टेस्ट के बाद अब आ जाएगा, जो लोग छठ के आ गए हैं वो आ जाएंगे कहां पर, अब आ गए कॉलेज में, राइट। अब समझिए कॉलेज वाली बात, जो 12वीं फेल कर गए अपना अपने काम में लगो, ठीक है। नाउ हायर एजुकेशन, दूसरा नहीं, दूसरा पार्ट पास करने का एक चांस, दूसरा भी अगर देंगे तो इट इज नॉट रिटन नाउ, इट इज नाउ कंसिडर्ड, यू नो। इनिशियली एक बार आप देखिए ऋषि, लुक एट द इंडियन सेजेस हियर्स, वो एक बार ही एग्जाम ले देते, फेल यू आर ड्रॉप्ड, नो चांसेस। दिस इज मॉडर्न कॉन्सेप्ट की चांस देना चाहिए, राइट, बचा कर सकते हैं। हाँ, आप क्रिटिसाइज आज के पर्सपेक्टिव में नहीं कर सकते। अगर किसी ने किया हो उस टाइम पे, कोई ऐसा पैरेलल एजुकेशन है जो चांस देता हो, तब आप कर सकते हैं। आइडिया, आज के पर्सपेक्टिव से प्लेटो को हम क्रिटिसाइज नहीं कर सकते, ठीक है। अच्छा, हायर एजुकेशन कब से है, ये हमारा 22, 10 साल और पढ़ाना है इनको, 22, 30 years, ठीक है। देखिए, द हायर एजुकेशन इज डेडिकेटेड टू द गार्जियन क्लास, the higher education is dedicated to guardian class. The higher education is dedicated to the guardian class, that is soldier and ruler, that is soldier and ruler, that is soldier and rulers. Let's stop. At this stage, science and arts should be taught. Science and arts should be taught. अब देखो दो ही चीज है, साइंस, दूसरा क्या है, आर्ट्स. Science and arts should be taught. In science, full stop. In science, mathematics, like algebra, in science, mathematics like algebra and geometry, Geometry, geometry should be taught. Geometry and क्या है, algebra and geometry should be taught. Time हो गया क्या? Geometry should be taught. It has multiple purpose in military skills. It has multiple purpose in military skills. It has multiple purpose in military skills. It has, right, multiple purpose for military skills. Look at military skills. You know, military needs algebra, right? Certain कहाँ पर क्या कैसे कैसे अरेंज करना है, आर्मी को ऐसे अरेंज करना है कि ऐसे अरेंज करना है कि ऐसे अरेंज करना है, right? They need that such training. ठीक है, देखिए, logic is necessary. Logic is necessary to cultivate reason. The logic is necessary to cultivate reason. The logic is necessary to cultivate reason and power of deliberation. And power of deliberation. And it is only possible by teaching art. And it is only possible by teaching arts. And it is only possible by teaching arts. Let me tell you, अब बात हो जाए कि whether scientists are more logical or the person who teaches arts. What do you think? Who read arts, who teaches arts? Because arts always relate to the society, right? To the nation state, to idea of a person. But science teaches you only for the metaphysical things, right? Metaphysical or even natural things, right? Natural things. And they are less connected with the society. Let me tell you, right? And therefore, even you go for engineering, you'll have a social science teacher. You'll have social science teacher. एक पेपर होगा आपका सोशियोलॉजी का, आपका इंजीनियरिंग था नहीं, अच्छा, एक टीचर होता है. Why? Because they teach society. You understand whatever you discover that should be useful to the society. Look at the scientist. Scientist अपना काम कर लेता है, फिर गॉड को ले आता है, फिर घंटा बजाता है, टन 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 टन. Now you know, right? They actually करता खुद है, but this entire thing dedicated to the God. Now their rationality becomes zero. उनको लगता है कि God है. Of course, God, there is a supernatural power. But we should not prioritize the God. We should not prioritize the God. And this logical, logic power, rational power should be cultivated only through the deliberation, discussion on society. Right? For example, anything you invent, but what if it has no use for the larger society? Right? Like AI has been. Have you heard about AI? Artificial intelligence? There are lots of debate of the possible harm of artificial intelligence. Right? Anyway, समझ में आया? ठीक है. Now write second examination. सेकेंड एग्जामिनेशन. अब ये क्या होता है? एट द एज ऑफ फिर से टेस्ट होगा भाई. अब समझ लो, वी हैव अ वेरी लेस टाइम, राइट? तो मैं समझा देता हूं. इफ यू कैन नोट डाउन फ्रॉम द टेक्स्ट विच आई हैव गिवन टू यू, दैट वुड बी सफिशिएंट. अगर नहीं कल बोलोगे सर मैं लिखवा दूं, तो मैं लिखवा भी दूंगा. अदर इफ यू बेटर इफ यू कैन डू, राइट? बिकॉज कुछ दिनों के बाद, थिंकर के बाद बहुत चीजें मैं समझा दूंगा, एंड देन कुछ चीजों आपको बोलूंगा कि अच्छे आपके पास ये नोट्स है, आप लिख लेना इसमें से, है ना? राइट? अब होता क्या है कि एट द एज ऑफ ये 30 देयर विल बी सेकंड एग्जामिनेशन, ऑफ कोर्स इन ऑर्डर टू अंडरस्टैंड द नेचुरल एप्टीट्यूड, right? Natural aptitude, those that who have courage and who have the wisdom kind of natural aptitude, right? Those who have natural aptitude or like rational, right, a wisdom mind should be allowed for the further study. Rest all people should be recruited to army position. They should be recruited to army. यहाँ के बाद उनको आर्मी में भेज दिया जाएगा, राइट? अब क्या होगा? एज 30 हो गया. नाउ 30 के बाद फिर से अब एक फर्दर स्टडी है जिसको बोलते हैं एक्सपीरियंस, राइट? एक्सपीरियंस है, फर्दर एजुकेशन है. वन मिनट. फर्दर हायर एजुकेशन, नॉट इसके बाद एक्सपीरियंस है, फर्दर हायर एजुकेशन. ये फर्दर हायर एजुकेशन किसको मिलेगा? राइट? वही जिसके पास विजडम नेचुरल एप्टीट्यूड है. कितने साल? 5 साल. 32 35 इयर्स. और उसके बाद वो एक्सपीरियंस में जाएंगे. उनके बाद डेपुटेशन हो जाएगा. 35 to 50 इयर्स, राइट? सो 30 to 35 इयर्स में वो क्या सीखेंगे? 30 to 35 इयर्स में वो सीखेंगे व्हाट इज लॉजिक, what is the idea of good, right? They will study trained in dialectical, they will train in philosophy, they will train in idea of good, right? They will understand the intelligible world, the world of ideas, which we did in very recent, very early classes, right? Hannah, while we discuss Plato. They will understand the intelligible world, जो common इंसान को समझ में नहीं आता है, right? Intelligible world, right? And they will understand the principle. Yeah, that is the principle of being, the theory of form, right? And in this, after this, they will further appointed in different ministry, because तुरंत पढ़ के जाएंगे तो कोई वैल्यू नहीं. You have to get experience. The 15 years you have to be with the rulers, different departments of your government, right? And by the age of 50 you will learn. तो 15 साल का ट्रेनिंग है, भी नहीं होता है, right? In department. And after the 50 you are able to become a ruler if you are wiser, if you are more wise wisdom than others, right? So that is his entire idea, a scheme of education that Plato had given. ठीक है? तो इसको पढ़ लीजिएगा. And then tomorrow we will discuss theory of communism. इसको लिख लेना, कुछ नहीं है इसमें, ठीक है? जो ब्लू किताब है ना उसी से लिख लीजिएगा. Fine. And then I'll stop here. See you tomorrow. अब पूछना है तो पूछ सकते हो, एनीथिंग. आज भी पूछ सकते हो, कल भी पूछ सकते हो, नो इश्यू.